Hey everyone, it's Will here. Today I've got a video on the new event Kfir C10 Blk for you. It should be available for you to earn or buy a few hours from this video coming out, assuming I get it up quickly enough. Unfortunately, I didn't have a whole lot of time with it since I just got it about 2 hours ago as of writing this. But I think I played enough battles to get a fairly good opinion on it, especially since I've played pretty much every top and higher tier jet in the game a fair amount. I will say that overall it's just a middle of the pack plane. It's not too good or too bad, and I'll get into what makes it that way in just a bit. Hopefully, based on what I have for you in this video, you can make a decision on whether you want to keep it or sell it, assuming you've been going after it like I have. If you guys enjoyed this video, please make sure to like and subscribe. That'll help me out a ton towards my goal of 2,000 subscribers. Also, I have a Discord down in the description if you guys would like to join the community. Starting off, this Kfir sits at 13.0 in air realistic and sim battles, and in ground realistic it sits at 12.7. As for the flight performance, it's about the same as the Kfir C7. It's pretty decent for where it sits, not particularly great, but it's enough to keep up where it counts. Right now it shows that it has the same engine as the Kfir C2, but it seemingly has performance more on par with the C7, like I already mentioned, so I'm not entirely sure on that part. But it does have pretty good acceleration, and on maps where you get an air spawn, you can get up to altitude and speed pretty fast. I was usually able to get to around 8,000 meters and Mach 1.3 or so pretty consistently. However, while I normally like to stay high for a bit longer due to some things I'll mention later, I really don't stay high for that long. I'll go ahead and get its weapons out of the way. It still has the two 30mm defas from the previous Kfirs with 140 rounds each. They're not the highest velocity guns out there, but if you can hit with them, they can do quite a lot of damage. Unfortunately, they don't seem to have a lead indicator right now, which seems wrong, but I'm not 100% sure it should have it. Though with the radar and avionics, I'm surprised it doesn't. But then again, it could just be unfinished. But if you learn to aim them, it shouldn't be too much of an issue. As for the missiles, it can carry a total of 4. You have the option of derbies and Python 3s, and you can configure them however you want since they can both go on all 4 pylons. I started off by taking 3 derbies and 1 Python, but I ended up just switching to all 4 derbies since that seemed to work a bit better for me. Typically, I like to carry at least one IR solution in addition to my Fox 3s, since that can help me get a kill on a closer range maneuvering target or someone multipathing. But in this case, I just don't think Python 3s cut it at 13.0 to begin with, and then there's the fact that I got a full up tier almost every single game. This low missile count and poor selection of missiles is part of what makes me put this in the average category. If you're a good player, then you can still do well with it. Despite me just playing 17 games before writing this, I managed to get a KD of just over 1.6. Now, that's not particularly amazing, but seeing as though I was just starting to get used to it, and I was still messing around figuring out how I like to play it, and what loadout I wanted, it's not bad. Personally, when it was first leaked, I was half expecting them to give it Python 4s, which are in the files by the way, in order to start testing out some more advanced missiles. The Python 4 would be kind of a middle ground in between what we have now and stuff like the 9X and IRIS-T. It has very good maneuverability and has a seeker similar to the seeker on a Stinger, so it would be possible to flare just a bit harder than what we have right now. But at the very least, I would have liked to see it get the Derby ER, which the Block 60 was primarily meant to use. The Derby ER would just be the Derby, but with about double the range, just under the range of the AIM-120C5, which I expect to see later this year. I'm not really sure why they specifically added the Block 60 instead of just the first Kfir C10, if they were just going to limit it to normal Derbies and Python 3s. And going back to the whole Python 3 and 4 thing, from what I understand, the Kfir C10 couldn't even use Python 3 anyway, since they had a different rail and it was specifically upgraded for Python 4. Then Python 5 was used on the Block 60. Now, I could be wrong, but this wouldn't be the first time Gaijin put a missile on a plane it couldn't use. And yes, I'm looking at you, Iranian F-14, but honestly, whether they just gave us the Python 4 or the Derby ER, it would make sense since it's limited to only 4 missiles total. I can get not getting both, but not getting either just rubs me the wrong way. I'll stop coping about it for now, but it really just doesn't make sense to me. As for the radar, it does get an ASA radar, and if you couldn't tell, I was being a bit sarcastic there, since Gaijin hasn't fully modeled the way an ASA works yet. At the very least, it does have an instant refresh rate for the targets, but it still scans like a mechanical radar instead of how an ASA should. But that aside, it has the ELM 2052 ASA, which is a bit different from the ASA on the Rafale in a good way. This radar also gets a gimbal so that it can have an even wider field of view. It has a respectable 140 degrees of total vertical FOV, and about 140 degrees of total horizontal FOV as well. This means that you can fire your derby from far out and you can still turn pretty far to one side while still guiding the missile to the enemy. You also have an HMD, which outside of my first BVR shot I like to get in at the beginning, I just switch over to HMD and go from there. If you have any enemy coming towards you from about 15 to 20 kilometers and in, it's all but a guaranteed kill. I already do this in like every other plane anyways, but it still works very well here. I've even been able to get kills doing this from about 2 kilometers and head-on since the derbies are fairly maneuverable. As of right now, the HMD in the cockpit does seem to be the same as the one on the F-16C and the F-15s in-game. This doesn't seem right, so I imagine they might give it its own HMD layout later on. Also, for the cockpit, it has 2 MFDs, so for those that like to play sim like me, that'll just be a nice bonus as well. In addition to all the other cockpit updates, it also gets a newer HUD, which is very nice. I'm looking forward to playing this in sim, and especially when 13.0 is at the top of its bracket, it should be a pretty good plane. One of the last things I'll talk about here is the ground ordnance. It does get access to a bunch of different dumb bombs, including a 3,000 pounder on the center line. But what is nice is that you get the Lightning III, which the F-15E still doesn't have somehow. You also get access to the GBU-12 and the GBU-49, with the 49 easily being the better option since it has GPS and inertial guidance as a backup if you lose laser lock. You can only take 2 guided bombs, but you can still take all 4 missiles, which is nice, so you can still go after air targets and ground RB. It won't be the best option for CAS, but it's definitely better than nothing if you have top tier Israel ground but not air. The last thing I want to talk about real quick is the countermeasure count. Previous Kafirs had 36 countermeasures, while the Kfir C10 doubles that to 72. Now, while I agree that that isn't a lot, it should be enough as long as you don't spam them off. It does get single pops at the very least, which does help a lot. I messed around with it a bit, and I'll probably continue to do so, but I personally went with 20 flares and 52 chaff, and that seemed to work out just fine. Overall, like I said, I think it's just middle of the pack. The radar is a big plus for me, with the major downside really being the missile count and selection. To me, this is more of just a cool variant of a plane that isn't particularly good or bad, but it is fun. I do recommend you go check out other videos on it if you're still not sure about it. And as always, if you have any questions this video didn't answer, please make sure to comment down below and I'll answer as best as I can. If you enjoyed and haven't already subscribed, please do so since it'll help out a ton. Also make sure to join my Discord where you can talk to other War Thunder addicts and get announcements when I post a new video.